Okay, shalom. We just had the video explaining some of the laws of Kidush, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the spiritual substance of why do we make Kidush? Why do we use wine? And what are we doing? And why are there two different ways that we make Kidush for Shabbat and Yom Tov? And what's the difference between the two that we're going to be making a Havdalah that says Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh, who separates between holiness and holiness? It's not just all the same holiness. Isn't God one? Why is there different, as we're different channels of holiness? And how can they both occupy the same space when it's both Shabbos and Yom Tov? Okay, Rabbi Nachman teaches us that our mind is like the sun and our heart is like the moon. Our mind is like the sun in the sense that there's wisdom in everything, that if we apply ourselves, we can find it. And that the wisdom is always apparent, logic is always sort of ever present. And if we only set our mind to it, we can find that there's a pattern, there are patterns, it's always there. And you can sort of count on the mind. We can always direct our mind. Sometimes we don't do such a job of it. We get distracted and we let our mind wander. But our mind is ultimately is kind of like a horse, that it'll go wherever it wants to if you just let it. But if you take control, the horse will follow. So it's true with our mind. But so in that way, it's like the sun. Our heart is a little bit less easy to control. And sometimes that we don't reflect all that light. That we can know something in our mind quite clearly. The sun is shining. We've got all the information clear, and we don't react. We don't have an emotional reaction to it. It doesn't move us. And there are times when we are moved, and there are times even when we're moved and we don't know why. That something is touching our heart, and we're unable to understand it. That sort of waxing and waning, the fickleness of our emotions is exemplified by them. Okay, so in our calendar, we have Shabbos, which is always by the sun. Every seventh time that we turn around and we see the sun again, the seventh one is Shabbos. And that comes with or without our intervention. We don't have to do anything. We don't have a mitzvah of declaring Shabbat. Shabbat happens because God made it holy. That's a direct holiness. And so that's sort of like our mind, is that the information is there, and whether or not we apply ourselves, it's apparent that today is the seventh time around. There's no question. Yom Tov, however, is based on the moon. And how so? The Torah tells us on the 15th day of the first month is Pesach, the 15th day of the first month. So the month we set by Rosh Chodesh, and we actually begin counting the months of the year with Parshat HaChodesh will be coming up as we enter the month of Nisan. But because Rosh Chodesh is dependent on us, we set the calendar of what day is Rosh Chodesh. That means that which is the 15th day of this month is dependent on which day we declare to be Rosh Chodesh. And in that way, Yom Tov is dependent on the moon and dependent on us. It's sort of an indirect holiness. It's a reflective holiness. Hashem gave us the commandment to set this day to be holy whenever we say that this is the 15th month. Sorry, the first month. So the 15th day of that first month becomes holy. So that was like the heart and like the moon, in that it's not a direct holiness. It's not direct from God that this day is innately holy, but because of the way that we're counting, we sort of reflect God's holiness. And so that's sort of emblematic of our heart, that there's a sense of it's reactive, that there's a stimulus and that we're moved by it, that we respond to God. So we have holiness that can go in both ways. We have days which are like Shabbat, which is holy only in one, and we can tune into it or not tune into it, but it's there and we have to respect it. And then there's a holiness of the Yom Tov, which is sort of is dependent more on us. We have to feel it, because you can have the same day and we can do many of the same things. Yes, there's some things that we're not allowed to do, but there are others we're allowed to cook, for the holiday now. When it's Shabbat and Yom Tov together, you're not allowed to cook because it's still Shabbat. But Yom Tov, there's more of a celebratory feel. You're allowed to go and barbecue, and that if you transfer the fire and don't light it. So there's something, it doesn't have the same sense of reverence and direct holiness, but it's a reflective holiness, and it's a way that we have to make it holy. And that's a different kind of holiness, that God directed holiness is Shabbos, and people directed or people reflected holiness is Yom Tov. And they can coexist, and that's what a special thing, right? That we can have those moments where our mind and our heart sort of are in tune together. That's what we're aiming for. When it's Shabbat and Yom Tov, to have both of these, to have the rest and the recognition of holiness coming straight from God on Shabbat, and also to have the sense of enjoyment. That's why on Yom Tov we get together with family, and there's a sense of a celebration. It's also not every day. Not every week do we have a Yom Tov, right? It's 3-4 times a year that we have these special days. Two sets of them in Pesach and 2 sets in Sukkot, and then also Rosh Hashanah and also Shavuot. And we have that special time, which is sort of set aside to enjoy, to connect, but that we have to make it special. And so when we make the Havdalah that says Hamavdil ben Kodesh LeKodesh, it's really drawing that line to say, yeah, there is time that we as Jews, we are designated as holy. We're like Shabbos. Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol ben Or L'choshech ben Yisrael La'amim ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish D'Imei HaMasa. It separates between light and dark, between the Jews and the nations of the world, and between the 6 days of the week and the Shabbos, between Shabbos and the 6 days. So the relationship, as it were, between us and the non-Jewish peoples is similar to the days of the week, right? Is that we're Shabbos, and a Jew is a Jew, whether you like it or not. It's still holy, right? That you can't get out of that. Just like Shabbos, it's still Shabbos. But also there's room for people who are to be holy and to connected to God that are not Jews, and so that's like on Yom Tov. And the people who have a good heart and can reflect the divine light. You don't have to. You can really participate. You can make yourself holy by drawing it in and reflecting the divine light. And so too it is with Yom Tov. As that we separate that, there's a difference between a holiness which comes from God has made me holy, and I, whether I like it or not, I am. And so better to like it, of course. And the holiness which comes of purposeful redirection of energy, to say that I've been empowered to make this day special, and we have to recognize that there are some things that need our intervention and some things that don't. So as we move into this time of celebration, both of the mind and of the heart, and into this distinction that are between, knowing that you don't always have to have the right answer, but Pesach is always about having a heart that asks a question. And so when we enter into the holiness of Pesach, that's about a heart, is to say, why is this night different? Oh, I don't have to, the mind is not there. Now, it happens to be in Shabbos that we're also going to ask, so that Bezrat Hashem will have even more clarity of what makes the night so different, so special. But we come into Yom Tov, it's about having that good-heartedness. I wish for all of us to have clear minds and good hearts, and to enjoy the Yom Tov thoroughly with both of them.